Got to start your morning with a little bit of business. Coming to you from a slightly warmer Elgin, which is fantastic. Warm enough even for some of these trees to think that it's time to start budding, which is pretty cool. Some fresh new leaves coming through in these yellow stinkwoods. One of my clients today spoke about this aspect of feeling like he's got a sense of inferiority. He tracks it back all the way to high school when he kind of had a little bit of a rebel orientation, not radically, but just honestly, school wasn't for him, like it isn't for so many people. And one of the reasons it's not for so many people is because let's be honest, it more often rewards compliance and conscientiousness and not as often rewards creativity, openness and curiosity. And so this actually led him to have less confidence in those years. And he ended up getting into a college that didn't feel like it was the same level of prestige perhaps as his friends might have gone on to establish in universities and that kind of thing. And anyway, he's carried this all along, and in some ways has had this sense of not quite fitting in, and perhaps others having a sense of skepticism to his ideas and his projects and that kind of thing. And he said with a little bit of a glimmer in his eye that, in the last few years, some of the projects that he's really been busy with have started to take root. He was a relatively early investor in Bitcoin, for example, which would have been a brave thing to do in those years because, I don't know exactly when he invested in, but it was, a good few years ago when certainly the majority of people would have considered that to be crazy. Now that's a very different story. We know how that's played out. A few other things fall into that category of having him amassed some evidence that that story of inferiority is actually not true. It got me to have an engagement with him where I found myself getting really passionate about this idea that, I don't think we fully comprehend the impact of going through schooling and ultimately university in grade levels, where we're constantly surrounded by people our same age and reminded about what we've been able to achieve relative to them and what we haven't been able to achieve relative to them. I think it's massive. I honestly think the claustrophobia of peer comparison is brutal for our sense of being able to risk in the world and going out to take bold action and doing stuff that we think is important. No wonder it's true then that people resist going to school reunions. So many of them get that feeling of like, God, if I could just not have to deal with the crushing claustrophobia of how have I fared up in comparison to my peers. Where in actual fact, there's no one in this race. It's only a one-person race. And we get to define our success for ourselves. And yet social media and society and cities in general put comparison opportunities on us all the time. But I think it's time that we are very discerning guardians of our thought processes when it comes to comparison. I love this word sovereignty. Sovereignty for me talks about being a supreme authority. And I am an advocate for advancing a sense of sovereignty over self, that we are the final authorities as to how we are, as to what we're aiming for, how we're going, and that any other authority outside of that needs to be seen with a strong sense of discernment, because let's just relax into us setting our own objectives and our own sense of possibility, and one day at a time striving towards arriving there, and not looking at how far we still always have to go to get there, but looking at what we did yesterday and last week and last month to make progress against who we used to be and where we used to come from, because that's all that matters.